it over to Marin. Thank you so much, Marin.
Thank you, Alice. I'm so excited to share an hour with you all. I'm kind of just tuning into myself right now. It was a little bit of a quick break. And I'm feeling a little sweaty, and I'm just glad you're not actually with me because I can smell myself, and you're welcome. You've got a screen in between. Dance parties get a little wild here. So yeah, I'm still coming down from that a little bit. So you're gonna watch my nervous system shift over the next hour as I am a little bit more in my sympathetic nervous system right now, still very grounded, which you'll learn what that means and how we can access this place of grounding connection, yet still the beauty of the sympathetic and the dorsal vagus nerve. So if this is all brand new information for you, watch this recording over and over again, because that was a really big thing for me in learning about breath and the nervous system, is that I just needed to hear something 100 times and from different perspectives until I really understood what it meant to me and how I could use that information in my life. So each one of you is at a different point in your journey. And I just want to speak to that first, to really honor where you are. I don't expect you to understand something that's complex the first time you hear it, but I do encourage you to just stay open and even just notice what happens in your body when you hear something that didn't make sense or that lit you up. Like sometimes it's like, oh, a connection was just made, right? Or there could be times when maybe my energy starts to get a little bit too quick, too fast paced, or I share a lot on the screen, and that might even rattle your nervous system a little bit. And so what I'm hoping is that over this next hour, we can really hold space for ourselves and for each other and really be in awe of the constant change inside our bodies and trust that nothing lasts forever. It keeps changing, it keeps moving. And if we can really just sink in and notice and be in awe of what's happening, it actually moves more efficiently, becomes a little bit smoother. So I don't want to give myself too much of an introduction because as I shared before, I've got lots to share. But my name is Marin McKeown, and I am part of the Inspired Yoga Institute team. And I am obsessed, for lack of a better word, with the nervous system and with breath work. And it all started really with one question: what's the right way to breathe? Right? I was having so many different experiences of different breath techniques, and they were all wonderful. But then I would walk away with, well, when do I really use that technique? And how should I be breathing when I'm not using a technique? And yeah, and what if a teacher is guiding me into a rhythm and it doesn't work for me? Or if someone says this is a calming breath, and then when I experience it, I'm like, well, why am I suddenly overwhelmed and wanting to run away? And that was a really important question to sit with, to understand that each one of us is going to actually be impacted by breath techniques differently, depending on time of day, depending on what other basic needs have been met or not met, what experience you have. One of the examples I love is that with breath holding is actually a really powerful and important technique. But maybe some of you can relate to this, if any of you have had a near-death experience around drowning or not being able to hold your, not able to breathe, that something as simple as holding your breath for a breath technique could actually be this huge danger signal that the body can't be with. And that was my experience for a long time. I almost drowned when I was really little, and I didn't realize that was what was my body was reacting to until I did some really deep embodiment work and had that memory come back and was able to be with it and release it. So breathwork becomes this really beautiful platform to get to know yourself more and to start to even heal things that you might not even be aware are still stuck in your body. So what I would encourage you to do, if this feels relevant and good for you, is to take a moment to feel into if you have any questions about breathing. like maybe there's been a curiosity of maybe that question even of like, well, what's the right way to breathe? If you relate with that, that would be a good one to write down, or any question. And why I would encourage you to do that is that my hope is that by the end of this session, your question will be at least part of it will be answered. Maybe not all of it, maybe all of it. And then part of that too is that you have an open invitation to reach out to me after. And if there is a pattern of questions that came up that I wasn't able to answer, then I can create something for you, maybe another video to give some more detail. Or it could be a one-on-one conversation that we end up having. So yeah, if that feels good for you to write out a question, no pressure. If you just want to be open-ended and receive and see what comes up, then that's perfect as well. So we're going to start with a little bit of breathing. And I'm going to put on a music track here. And so as I get this set up, just take a moment to really settle into the position you're in, or to change your position if that feels good. And without forcing your breath, just start to feel the tone, the pace of this sound. And start to feel it in your body. Maybe a little bit of movement. Like the sound is moving through you like a wave. Just notice breath by breath. Feeling yourself settle in a little bit more. Without fixating or forcing your breath, what is it to guide your breath? Where's that line that moves constantly between trusting the innate wisdom of your breath and body, yet also noticing it and offering it guidance? And you might experience that as the sound continues, your breath and your body entrain to the sound if you surrender to it. Perhaps even feeling as the tone moves up, there's an uplifting, filling up sensation. As the tone drops, feel yourself surrender, get grounded. So whether there's noticeable physical movement, the most subtle motion of your breath moving inside your body, feeling the wave-like oscillation of each breath. Not driving it, not forcing it, yet also not just simply receiving it. Just a few more breaths like that. I'm going to turn off this sound now, and your invitation is to continue just breathing, noticing your breath, feeling that wave-like movement continue through your body. But in our short time together, what I really want you to understand and be curious about is how your breath and your nervous system are intimately connected. And we can do this through the understanding of how your nervous system works and just the simple states that we all move into, and how you might breathe in those states. And then to understand how to find your current baseline, which will give you some insight into different techniques that might be really beneficial for you to practice, that again wouldn't be necessarily as beneficial to someone else who has a different baseline. And as well, to understand what's possible when you practice better breathing. So how you breathe is directly and immediately connected, and it impacts your physical, mental, and emotional health. So your breath is directly and immediately impacting your physical, mental, and emotional health. Okay, immediate is an important word there. So a healthy brain and nervous system is a flexible brain and nervous system. And again, flexibility is a very key word that I want you to remember. Now, your breathing mechanics in terms of what it is to be a functional breather, how to breathe properly, is not the only important part here. We also need to understand breathing chemistry. And it's through breathing mechanics and breathing chemistry that we create this rhythm that is how our breathing psychology emerges. Right? So it's those two parts, the mechanics and the chemistry, and that's what gives us our psychology. Breathing is regulated by a fundamental system in the brainstem. So it's communicating with all other systems in your body. It is your physiology that is driving the pace, the rate, tone, and quality of your breath, while it also informs the fundamental functioning of your psychology. So one of my favorite quotes from Brian McKenzie is, "Your psychology is in your physiology." And when we can take the wheel of our psychology by learning how to listen and guide our physiology, we suddenly have a lot more self-control than we may have had otherwise. Now, this is where it gets a little bit complex, and I'm going to break it down as simply as possible because this is really important to understand the different states of your nervous system. Now, 500 million years ago is when the first part of our nervous system really came on board, and this is your dorsal vagal branch. This is your ability to play dead, right? So as a survival, animals way back when, 500 million years ago, this was their only line of defense. There is something attacking them, or there's a life threat in the midst, and this dorsal vagal branch allowed animals to be able to dissociate, to collapse, to play dead, so that if the attacker grabs this animal into their jaw, if they play dead, there's a possibility they'll be left alone, and then they can survive. So all of this is in service of survival, including numbing, as we've talked about a little bit today. That actually is in service of your survival, right? If you're in a life-threatening situation, that could potentially mean immense amount of pain. And so our body, actually, our nervous system can numb the entire body so we don't feel pain, right? Why I love learning about this part is that it can actually change our perspective when we experience something like this. For me, the dorsal vagal response was a huge part of most of my life, actually, of falling into these really deep, dark bouts of depression and feeling completely lethargic, like I can't do anything. And when I started recognizing that this is hypoarousal, this is my nervous system trying to keep me alive, because I would spend so much time in sympathetic, in the hyperarousal place, that the next line of defense is shut down everything. And so this actually allowed me to turn towards this part of my nervous system with compassion and awe. Like, how amazing is it that our body can do this for us? Of course, if it's happening all the time, it totally gets in the way. But if we can first understand and appreciate that it's our body trying to protect us, at least for me, that really softens the experience. I don't feel as upset about it, especially once you know how you can regulate yourself. So when you experience something like this hypoarousal, this dorsal dive, as it's called, we can feel despair and separation. We will feel immobilized with fear, or like we're collapsing, numb, as I said, a foggy brain, lethargy, feeling lost and alone, untethered and floating. And how you will breathe in this state is shallow, right? If you really connect into what it's like, if your body thinks that you're in life threat and you fall into this place of collapse, dissociation, lethargy, you're not going to be breathing very much. So you could have apnea while you're awake. You know, maybe some of you have experienced that, of just realizing, oh, I'm not breathing, right? It's something that a lot of us experience. And when this happens, you're breathing shallow and holding your breath unconsciously. Your body's not receiving enough oxygen. And DIMS versus SIMS here is saying that when you're in this state, there are more danger signals in your body versus safety signals, right? So understanding this actually gives us some access into another way that we can help regulate ourselves, is to actively seek out safety signals. And I can share a little bit more about that in a few moments here. So next here we have the sympathetic nervous system. So this came on the scene 400 million years ago. And this gave us the ability to not only just play dead and collapse if we're being attacked, but now we could actually mobilize ourselves. We could get aggressive right back or run away, right? So this is a place of mobilized with fear. It's that do something feeling in your body. We'll have stories of fear, comparison, and judgment when we're in this place. Alarmed, agitated, aggressive, defensive, a sense of unease and this hypervigilance, a narrowed vision, right? We can really fixate on whether it's a physical object or an environment or a thought. We get very narrowed. And it's actually going along with how we breathe. Because when we're in that hyper-aroused place, we're breathing fast, right? So our body is actually starting to tense up, preparing for battle. And our vision is supposed to narrow at that point. That's part of this survival state. So when it's actually arising because you're in literal physical danger, this is amazing. Like, it's so good that we have this system. But again, for anyone who experiences this state a lot, people who struggle with ADHD, or a lot of anger in your body, or just feeling really judged or really fearful, you'll know that this is a really uncomfortable place to spend a lot of time or to feel stuck in. So how we breathe in this state is fast and tense, and tends to be over breathing. So we're breathing much quicker than what would actually be healthy over a long period of time. And what this does with over breathing is it produces hypocapnia, which is not enough carbon dioxide. And this is where I could spend a whole hour just talking about this complex relationship between carbon dioxide and oxygen. But the main piece here is to recognize that carbon dioxide is necessary for breathing, for receiving oxygen. So if we're over breathing, we are exhaling more carbon dioxide than what is healthy. And if we don't have enough carbon dioxide in the body, then even if we have a whole lot of oxygen, it's not going to absorb into the body. So you can think of it as unfriendly hemoglobin, because oxygen actually is in the red blood cells. That's how it moves through the body and then absorbs into the different organs and systems. And when we are over breathing quickly, the hemoglobin actually tightens up and it won't release oxygen or nitric oxide. So we start to feel tighter. It becomes this escalation of more hypervigilance, more agitation, more alarm, right? And again, DIMS and SIMS. So in this state, there are more DIMS than SIMS. The body is perceiving more danger than safety. Now, this last one is the ventral vagal system. This came onto the scene 200 million years ago. And as you can see down here on the bottom, it's not just its own system. It includes sympathetic and dorsal. It is the evolution of these other two systems. It's the next level. When we are in this place of ventral vagal, we have stories of possibility and unity and self-leadership. It is a spectrum of mobilized to immobilized, right? So mobilized being similar to that sympathetic nervous system, to immobilized, which is dorsal, but it's without getting stuck in the fear or taken over. So ventral vagal is both and. It's the ability to be calm, as I said at the beginning here, calm, grounded, connected, open, yet I'm still flexibly moving through my sympathetic and my dorsal system. So when I'm in ventral with dorsal, I'm able to meditate. I'm able to enjoy moments of awe and stillness, maybe cuddle, or do a practice of non-sleep deep rest like yoga nidra, and actually be restored by it, be awake, versus having a nap, which is also restoring, but there's other ways to restore. And when I'm in ventral vagal and I have sympathetic energy, I'm playful, I'm adventurous, I can do hard things. I can feel the activation in my system, yet I'm here for it. I stay with it versus it escalating out of control. So that's where the flexibility comes in. It's the ability to move through these different places of my nervous system without getting stuck. It's constant motion. So ventral vagal is also synonymous with your higher self. It's your ability to turn towards what arises versus being taken over by it. And when you're in this state, the way you'll breathe is coherent, which really just means balanced and sustainable, rhythmic, and where the whole body starts to work like a symphony versus every system kind of marching to its own beat and not really being connected. When we're breathing erratically, shallow or really fast, it makes it so every system in the body has to work inappropriately, in a sense, to prepare for battle. And when we can get more into this place of really slowing down and finding coherence, then every part of our body starts to settle and work together. Part of this proper breathing is understanding diaphragmatic breathing and what's appropriate, right? Because sometimes breathing fast is appropriate. If I'm going to go for a run, or if I'm, preparing myself for a presentation and maybe I'm feeling a little bit low, I would do a quicker breath technique to bring energy into my body. Or if I'm running, I'm going to be working my cardiovascular system, so I'm going to be breathing quicker. But as soon as I'm done and I start coming back to restoring or relaxing, I don't want my breath to be moving quick anymore, right? I want it to be able to slow down. And so that's the flexibility and the appropriate nature of the breath, is that there's so many different ways to breathe. And we want it to actually flexibly move to meet what's appropriate, what we're doing in the moment. When we're in ventral vagal, we have access to compassion and courage, curiosity, centeredness, calm, clarity, connection, creativity, confidence. We have peace, playfulness, patience, presence, and power. A lot of really good things. And why this is important to understand is that, well, if you're living in sympathetic and dorsal, maybe bouncing back and forth between those two, I've heard some of you talk about, being authentic. And if we're in sympathetic or in this dorsal place and you're trying to be compassionate or courageous, it's not going to feel authentic. It's going to be exhausting. You could do it. You can make it happen. You can override your system and choose how you want to show up. And sometimes that's appropriate. But if that's your pattern, if that's what you always do, then we start to feel pretty disconnected from who we really are, because we're not speaking our truth. Right? And so learning how to get into this ventral vagal state more and more is really going to help open up your life, your ability to flexibly move through these different states and to really feel authentic, because this is the place of your higher self. In ventral vagal, there's more safety signals than danger signals. So that's one of the really important pieces to this practice of ventral vagal, is we have to actively seek out safety signals so that our body can start to relax and start to move inward and expand this space of ventral vagal. So this is just another map of the same thing. And I'll just move through this briefly for some of you who might know this Window of Tolerance by Daniel Siegal. I've just kind of imposed the Polyvagal Theory, which comes from Stephen Porges, on top of it. So the window of tolerance is really like your ventral vagal system. It is your optimal state where you have access to your whole brain, right? So right here it says you have reason and emotion and you're mentally engaged. This is where we obviously want to spend more and more time. We recover really quickly. We're present. We enjoy more. We feel more. And when we're in this state, you can really think of the sympathetic nervous system as being kind of the upper quadrant of the window of tolerance. So this is adventure, playfulness, courage, doing hard things. And at the bottom quadrant would be the dorsal branch. So this would be, again, your ability to be still and to restore, to truly relax and enjoy relaxing. And when we get to the point where there are more danger signals in our body than safety signals, first we jump up into hyperarousal. So this is still the sympathetic nervous system, but now we're disconnected from our ventral vagal system. We're no longer actually connected to our heart in the same way, right? The priority now is find safety and do whatever I can to make myself safe. And so we end up doing and saying things often that we wouldn't otherwise do if we were feeling calm and connected. When we're in hyperarousal, our thoughts are moving really quick. We're overreactive. We're emotionally distressed. And again, if we stay up here, the next line of defense is shut down. So we move into this dorsal dive of hypoarousal, where we experience depression and lethargy, numbness, and not feeling motivated. Right? So often people will bounce back and forth between hyper and hypo, as I did for most of my life up until about 6 years ago. So this feels very real for me. So what's really interesting is that the healthy movement of your nervous system actually mimics the healthy rhythm of all relationships, right? We're not meant to be in our window of tolerance or in the ventral vagal system really all the time. We want to follow a rhythm where, we feel connected, and then something ruptures, we disconnect, and then we repair and we come back, right? So that's really what healthy breathing and healthy relationships and healthy regulation is. And what I love about this is it really takes the pressure off. Okay, I don't have to be perfect and connected all the time, right? I can actually just notice and allow disconnection to happen so I can learn from it and feel, and then I regulate myself and I come back. And you could be doing this 50 to 300 times a day on average, right? A lot. So what I will say here is one of my favorite quotes from Trevor Yellick, one of my teachers, is that succinctly put, we restrict our feelings by restricting our breathing, right? And Alice spoke to that earlier in her session of often what we do when we're feeling something uncomfortable is we brace, right? We feel tension, we curl in towards it. Like it's too much, I have to curl in and try to block it. And we do that by holding our breath. And so what we want to learn is how to remain open to our breath, even when things get hard. And luckily, there's some really great practices that help us do that. So this is just giving you a different picture of what why that daisy was on the last image. The daisy model comes from the work of Leetha Marchetti, and she actually focuses on teaching nervous system techniques to children. And so she created this model for children. And when I learned it, I was like, this is great for adults too. This makes so much sense. So basically what she says is that in the middle is what you would call self-control, or maybe what you would call your window of tolerance, right? And what happens is each petal is this process of disconnection or rupture, right? I start moving up into my sympathetic nervous system. And what we need to do is notice it, right? Regulate, reconnect, and come back. And we do this over and over and over again throughout the day. But what happens is if we start moving into our sympathetic nervous system and there's not a moment to notice or to repair, then what happens is it becomes the stem. And again, this becomes another map that is deeply connected to what I've already showed you, right? You've already seen these parts, but now we're seeing it in a different way. Is down this stem are the different levels of the nervous system, right? So right away, if I haven't repaired, I move into hyperarousal. I get aggressive, right? I feel that do something feeling like I need to fight for what I need. And if that doesn't serve my survival, or I can't do that, or that doesn't work, then I move into flight, still in hyperarousal, but now I just want to run away, just kind of escape what's going on here. And if that doesn't help me find safety, or I can't run away. You know, if you think about children or you as a child in different situations where you couldn't really run away. Or maybe you did. I ran away many times, but I always came back. But that's what we do, is we move to running away. And again, if that doesn't help us find safety, well, then we get into this fun place of feeling hyper aroused and hypo aroused at the same time. This freeze response, like so much sympathetic energy in the body, that quiver, that energy, yet frozen, like it can't do anything. I don't know what to do. And again, if we don't find repair from there, then we move into full shutdown. Now, there's also something called the fawning or the appeasement response, and that also would be on the stem. And that's what we do to function when we have to, right? So it's similar to this hypo and hyper freeze response, but it turns into like having a mask on, being able to show up and move through life, even though it doesn't feel authentic. Or you could be quite shut down inside and just forcing yourself to move through life because you have to, for whatever reason. So that's another part of the nervous system, is that like it's pretty amazing we can do that. But anyone who experiences that a lot could attest to how difficult, how much struggle there is in learning how to regulate from that place. So a key part here is to recognize that on the stem, it's all overwhelm. Everything's just too much. And when you're in overwhelm, you can only do or think what you've done or thought in the past. It's really hard to it's impossible to problem solve when you're on the stem here. You're just going to be reactive. We don't have access to our whole brain. And again, why that's important to know is because you can, don't try to force yourself into feeling better when you're really feeling like you're overwhelmed. Like there's important processes to feel what's going on in your nervous system and compassionately regulate yourself versus thinking that you can just force yourself out of it or pretend it's not there. These are very real and powerful states. And this is a beautiful statistic that I love to share, is that what's healthy is about 70% of the day requiring regulation from rupture to repair. And I was quite shocked when I first learned this, but that's healthy. 70% of your life requires regulation from rupture to repair. So if we can get really good at learning how to feel when things disconnect and rupture, and how to regulate ourselves back into self-control, that's the key, right? That's the process, is how do we keep this motion going? And we do that with our breath. So optimal breathing mechanics and chemistry results in improved physical performance, symptom abatement, improved immune system functioning, improve your heart health, have a higher heart rate variability, improve your cognition, your memory, your ability to learn, your ability to sustain your attention, enhanced task performance, successful management of emotions and stress. You can expand your consciousness, learn to be more present for yourself, for others, and for your environment. You can improve your self-awareness, and overall, you'll have better personal health. And these are all notes from Dr. Peter Litchfield, who has so much amazing information about breathing. He's a great resource for anyone who wants to follow their inquiry in this world of breath work. So we're going to move into some experiencing. And what I'll invite you to do first is check in with your posture. Posture matters, right? This image shows it pretty clearly that especially with our devices, we can spend a lot of our day with our head down. And as this image shows, the changing angle of your neck can significantly increase the weight of your head on your spine and body. And over time, that's going to create a lot of havoc for your nervous system, because there's a lot of really important signals and connections that are moving from your brain down through your neck. And we want that portal to be open and clear. So as you settle into a position of comfort, really feel into the posture of your spine and your head. And I am a huge fan of using a wall, leaning my back against the wall. So if that feels good for you, please do that. So as we move through these next 3 steps, I have included a little bit more on each step than what we'll actually move through together. And my hope is that this will spark your curiosity, that you can do your own continued learning and growth, and to also know that this is something that we really focus on at Inspired Yoga Institute. And I have a specific program through the Teachable portal with Inspired Yoga Institute that dives into all of this a little bit more. So one of the, other than posture as being, the first step in getting into breathing, practicing your breathing, another is to honor the important part of increasing your ability to focus and to direct your awareness. And one of the simplest and funnest ways I have learned to harness my focus is to use my eyes. So I invite you to have your eyes open and look away from the screen for now. And begin to look around your space. And we want to do this with the intent of noticing detail. We move our eyes around a lot without often really noticing or moving slow. And that's the point of this practice, is to move your eyes around your space and notice the shape of your space. Notice where the walls meet the ceiling. Notice the colors, the shadows. And as you continue just moving your eyes around, noticing detail, see if you can weave in the movement of your breath, the movement of your head and neck, and the movement of your eyes. I like to think of them like braiding. In each moment, I am braiding the movement of my breath, my eyes, my head and neck, as I notice detail. It's just for another few moments, keeping your eyes moving, landing occasionally, but on the next breath, just start moving again. What else can I notice? It's mindfully moving, breathing, noticing. And now what I'll get you to do is choose one object in your space, and zoom in with your eyes. And notice if your breath changes. Often when we zoom in, it's a narrowing. Our breath might start to feel a little bit tense. Your posture might start to change. But if you notice it, you can soften it and continue zooming in with this intention of noticing detail about this object you're gazing at. Like holding open-ended space. As soon as you notice detail, it registers, and then, well, what else can I notice about this object? What else is there? Let's do that for another few breaths here. And then release from the focus and pan out. Take in the whole space, and again, allow your eyes to start to float. Notice detail in the space. And then one more time, choose an object and zoom in. Really notice. Notice something you've never noticed about that object. And then once again, zoom out. And as your eyes continue to move, feel that braiding motion, the movement of your head and neck, perhaps your spine. You get a little bit more somatic movement, the movement of your breath, the movement of your eyes. So just as a little caveat here is that exact practice of moving your eyes is pretty much how we track sensation internally, right? First, we just hold open space. What do I notice? What's there? What's arising? And then occasionally we zoom in. really get to know detail about sensation or emotion, knowing that we can zoom out, we can come back to our breath if we need to find safety right away, if we're tapping into something that feels intense, like grief or pain, just intense emotion. So you can dip your toes in and then pan out and find safety somewhere in your body. But it's the exact same process, and it can start by training your eyes. If you can do it in your physical environment, you then have the template of how to do it in your internal environment. Now, before we move further, we need to really understand, well, what is it to breathe functionally? And to understand this is to know how your diaphragm moves. And that if you are in a highly sympathetic, hyper-aroused state, your diaphragm's going to be tight and it's not going to move very well. And so we need to be patient. And again, using our eyes to look around, which I invite you to do at any point for the rest of today. If you're feeling a little bit activated, use your eyes, right? Show your body, show your nervous system that you're safe by taking in these safety signals. You wouldn't move your eyes and zoom in and zoom out like that, paying attention to your breath and your body. You wouldn't do that if you were in danger. So it starts to calm your system down, and then your diaphragm can move with ease. So what I'll invite you to do as an invitation, you don't have to do this. You can stay with the process of moving your eyes and just somatically moving. We can kind of sequentially build from here, and you're welcome to stay at any point that feels really relevant and important for you. So if you'd like to move into practicing diaphragmatic breathing, a practice I love to do is bring my palms onto my belly and just have the tips of my middle fingers touching. So those are the longest fingers on my hands, but they might not be for you. So whatever the longest fingers are, you want to have just the tips touching pretty much right where your belly button is. So that on your inhale, you can feel your belly expand and your fingers separate. And as you exhale, they slowly come back to touch. So as you do that, just see if you can really feel into this strong, pliable muscle, this diaphragm, respiratory diaphragm that sits right below your heart and lungs. Okay, so on every inhale, the diaphragm is pulling down, and that's why your belly bulges, right? You're not breathing air into your belly. No, your belly's being compressed by the diaphragm. It's being pushed down. And so everything within your core needs to go somewhere. So it's going to bulge out if you let it, right? That pressure needs to go somewhere. If you hold your belly tight when you inhale or you don't let it move, a lot of pressure could be put on, well, your heart or on your pelvic floor, right? That pressure needs to go somewhere. So let's allow that horizontal expansion so the whole body can receive this breath and move in sync. So the inhale, the diaphragm moves down, the belly will expand on the front, the sides, and the back. As the lungs and the heart get stretched, they get bigger. And as you exhale, your diaphragm will glide back up to its neutral position where everything just resets. So your belly is where there's most of the parasympathetic receptors, right? This is what really calms the system down, because you wouldn't do a belly breath if you were in danger. There are more sympathetic receptors in your chest. So breathing into your chest is not bad, right? It just needs to be appropriate. If I'm holding a plank position, well, I want to engage my core and be squeezing my body tight as I push down into the floor. So while I'm breathing, it actually will be a little bit more of the chest, right? Or if I'm running, I'm going to start breathing more into my chest because I need my sympathetic nervous system to be with me to keep me energetic and moving. But when I move into restorative breathing, right, or if I'm trying to regulate myself or relax, I want my belly to move. And having the tangible feedback of your hands on your belly is just a great way to keep your attention there and to have something that you can focus on, the movement of your fingers as they separate and the feeling of your belly, pushing into your hands and then relaxing down. Now, as you do that, just recognize that your inhale is connected to your sympathetic nervous system, right? So on every inhale, you're bringing energy into your body. And your exhale is connected to your parasympathetic nervous system. So ideally, on every exhale, we're down regulating. And this is where we can start to understand how we can take advantage of this knowledge. You know, if I want to bring energy into my body, well, I want to breathe a little bit quicker. And I might even do breath techniques that get my chest moving, sip in air until I'm full and sip in a little bit more. Or Kapalabhati breath, conscious connected breathing. These are activating breath techniques. But if I want to down regulate, I might do a breath where my exhale is double the length of my inhale. Or a Brahmari breath where I hum on my exhale. Feeling that vibration, lengthening the exhale. Or I might even do an inhale and I hold my breath for a few seconds and then a long exhale from there. Right? So you can start to play around with the different techniques when you really understand what you're trying to do and why. But that's one of the simple ways to keep that in mind is inhale is uplifting and exhale is down regulating. Now, this last piece here, as you continue focusing on your breath, is that technically the optimal coherent breathing rhythm is around 5.5 to 6 seconds in and 5.5 to 6 seconds out. Now, this is an approximate. This is not going to be for everyone, and it's not something to force. If you can slowly guide yourself into that rhythm and it feels good and nourishing, then that's great. But if you are practicing a balanced rhythmic breath and you find that 3 seconds in, 3 out, or 4 in, 4 out actually feels more nourishing for you right now, then that's your coherent breath. Right? Really important to honor. This is what your body needs for balance. And we can retrain our nervous system through breath techniques so that we can actually expand our ability to find a nourishing breath while we breathe slower. So how do we do that? Now, this is a little practice that I'll invite you to do. And this is something to, if you're really curious about it, I would encourage you to do this actually every day for the next week to see how it changes. And you can get kind of a general baseline. But this is your blood oxygen level test. And we do this with a breath hold. So what I'll invite you to do now that you've kind of spent some time really being with your breath and feeling the rhythm, attending to your breath, is within your next few breaths, I'll get you to just do a regular breath. And on your exhale, you're going to hold and just count internally how long you're holding your breath without forcing. So this is an important part of it, is that you want to wait for the first impulse to breathe, right? When your diaphragm spasms or you start to feel that sensation of like, I have to take a breath now. And I don't want you to like squeeze around it and try to force yourself. This is not a test of how long can you hold your breath. It's a specific test of when does your body say it's time to breathe. So when you're ready, if this feels like something you're interested in doing, just at the bottom of a regular exhale, so you don't need to exhale all of the air out, right? A regular exhale, you still have a little bit of air in your lungs. So just a regular exhale, and you'll hold, and you'll count. Just patiently wait for your diaphragm to spasm, or for your mind to yell, it's time to breathe, and it could show up differently. And as soon as you're ready to breathe, you just allow yourself to breathe. And on that first breath after your breath hold, if it's a really erratic, strong, loud breath, that means you held a little too long, right? We want the next breath to actually be quite easeful. That's how we know we were in the realm of mild air hunger. And what this tells us is your current level of carbon dioxide tolerance. And what the research is showing is that ideally, we want to get to a place where we can hold our breath, no problem, for 30 seconds or much more. And I can speak for myself that I'm pretty competitive and uh, and had been practicing breath work for a long time when I discovered this important piece of breathing, this carbon dioxide tolerance. And the first time I did the Bolt score test, I could hold my breath for 12 seconds, and my next inhale was pretty erratic. I definitely held it longer because I was embarrassed. I didn't want my number to be below 10, but the truth is it was. And it made sense. I was a chronic overbreather. And so what that meant was that there was such low levels of carbon dioxide in my body pretty much all the time that many of my organs and systems were not receiving the oxygen they needed. My body was working way harder than it needed to all the time. And my body had adapted because it's so wise, right? So it adapts to a different level of carbon dioxide. And so when carbon dioxide started elevating to what's quite healthy, it was way above my baseline, and my body would start to panic. So if that feels true for you, these are some pretty important practices. And I would love to do one of these with you. And I'll just speak to this quickly so that we can finish on time. But these are practices that will help you increase your carbon dioxide, which is carbon dioxide tolerance, which is synonymous with expanding your window of tolerance or improving your mental, physical, and emotional health. You will be less reactive. You're going to have more energy. You'll feel more spacious, have more self-control. Your ability to regulate yourself will increase immensely. And we do this through positive stress exercises. And what's really key about this is it's not just about doing the exercise that's stressful. It's about how you are with it, right? Meeting the stress and relaxing, right? Like cold water immersion. This is something I thought I would never be able to do. Have a cold shower. Like, hell no, that sounds awful. But as I started really learning about this carbon dioxide tolerance, and truthfully, when I discovered my Bolt score was so low, I knew I needed to have some pretty severe interventions if I was going to make a difference in my nervous system. So I have a cold shower every morning. And what's really important about this cold shower is that as I feel my body start to get activated, I consciously relax. So every inhale, I actually allow myself to feel a little activated by the cold water. But every exhale, I consciously feel my whole body downregulate. And it completely changes my experience with the cold water, right? So I actually really enjoy it, and I look forward to it now. This is what activating breath techniques do as well, is to meet the activation and to be with it, stay conscious with it, and then do something at the end to relax your system so that you're not walking away from an experience in activation. As well as commitment to nasal breathing, which is super important. There's lots of resources that show how we can start to unblock the nasal pathways, because that's often an issue for people with nasal breathing. And again, this is something I'd love to support you in. If any of this is like, well, that sounds great, but I can't do that, or I don't know how, I would love to have a conversation with you. So what we're going to do, just to finish this off today, is we're going to do a little technique that is conscious connected breathing. And we're going to do a short one. Okay. So generally what I'll do is I'll do 30 of these up to, so 30 or upwards of like 5 to 10 minutes of this breath technique, and then some breath holding, and then into coherent breathing after. But what we're going to do, since we're a little bit short on time, is we're just going to do 10 of these breaths, and then we're going to do a breath hold, and then we're going to do a double pump inhale, and we're going to hold, and then we're going to hum the exhale out, and then we're going to move back into coherent breathing for 1 minute, so we can feel ourselves kind of move through these different spectrums of the nervous system, so that you can have that experience of what it's like to feel a little activated, what it's like to feel yourself down regulate, what it feels like to hold your breath. And again, if any of this is brand new to you, just keep that in mind, right? It can be a little rattling for your body. So no expectation that this is going to be like life-changing right away, but just stick with me, and we'll finish this process together. So conscious connected breathing is an effortful inhale, and then the exhale just falls out of your body. Okay, and what makes this a little bit complicated in a sense is that as you're breathing quicker, you'll find that as your nervous system activates, your belly will actually tighten up and you'll want to do more chest breathing, right? So this is part of the practice, is to notice that escalation of your nervous system. And on every exhale, let the exhale just be this like letting go, so that your belly starts to relax a little bit more. Okay, so every breath needs attention so that you can be mindful that you're not just skyrocketing into sympathetic activation. And even if that's your experience, that's fine. You can notice it, and then we'll bring ourselves down. It's different than when we're just activated and we have no control over something in our life. This is a positive stress experience because we're choosing it, right? Totally different experience. So it can be helpful to have your hands on your belly when you do this. Simply, again, to feel the movement of your hands. Right? We want to focus on horizontal. Super common for us initially, especially with quicker breathing, to try to do vertical. Right? So just be mindful if that's something you notice in your body. Really go for horizontal. Take up space. Feel your belly push into your hands. And we're consciously breathing quicker than we would if we were just in a regular moment in the day, right? So I'm asking you to breathe fast. I'm asking you to overbreathe consciously. So we're taking out the pause. There's no pause in between each breath. One leads right into the next, okay? So I'm gonna count out 10, and then at the bottom of the 10th breath, we're all gonna pause and hold. And we're only gonna do this breath hold for, let's say, 10 seconds. And you will find that after consciously overbreathing, you can actually hold your breath a lot longer than when you did that Bolt score exercise. It's different. You've already changed the chemistry in your body, so holding your breath will feel different. So we'll hold for about 10. If that's not possible for you, that's okay. You start the double pump inhale when you need to. The double pump is also belly and then chest. Okay, so we're pumping twice and then we pause. And an important part of this is notice how when we're full, we might go, and we want to instead notice the fullness and go. So we're relaxing around the fullness. And we'll hold this one for 5. Short hold at the top, and then a long exhale out. Right to the bottom. And then I'll guide you into 1 minute of finding coherent breath, with the invitation of noticing how it might feel different than when you were trying to find coherent breathing initially. Okay? All right. So hands on your belly if that feels good for support. I think I'll do that. Or even on your ribs. I find that I need more feedback in the horizontal expansion. Like my belly pops open pretty easily now, but it's the sides and the back that I need to focus on. So if you feel like you want some feedback on your back or on your sides, then move your hands there. Okay. So just a few regular soothing breaths. Just noticing what's in your nervous system right now, how quick your thoughts are moving, or how grounded you feel. How easy is it to connect to your breath in this moment? Just so you can see what shifts. So you can follow my pace with conscious connected breathing, or you could do it a little slower, or you could do it a little quicker, okay? But I'll do 10 at my pace, and then I'll lead through the breath holds from there. Just know it doesn't need to be totally in sync with me, okay? All right, here we go. Hold your breath at the bottom. Relax, be empty. For another 3, 2, 1. Double pump inhale. Notice the fullness, relax around it. You do a little shimmy or roll gracefully around your full lungs. For another 2, 1. Long humming exhale.
now slowly move back into a steady, soft, nourishing breath. I find it really helpful to have a hand on my belly when I'm trying to slow my breath down. So whenever you inhale, you could put a little bit of pressure in so that your inhale has to move slower, especially after a more activating experience. Sometimes meaning the pressure of your hand can slow your breath down that much quicker. Just start to tune into your coherent breath. What's the rhythm that feels nourishing and supportive for you? Can you feel the strong, pliable movement of your diaphragm? Noticing if you have a tension that stays with your breath for a few rounds, or if it's just one breath and then you wander. But again, as you've heard, it's about coming back. So even in maintaining the relationship with your breath, honor disconnection and recognize what's important is the repair and the coming back. Just give yourself another 30 seconds, just you and your breath. Feel into your rhythm. All right, you can slowly open your eyes back up if they've been closed. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this hour with me. And I hope I didn't move too quickly, and you got some value and some curiosity out of this session. And I'll just reiterate that if you have a question that was not answered, or maybe a question that is arising for you now, that this is something that I would love to hear. So whether it's something you want to type into the comments right now, or reach out to me afterwards, I would love to continue in this fascinating conversation around breath and the nervous system.